The stars had begun to die, not with glory, not with fire, but with silence. Cold, final, unceremonious silence. Across the void, once proud constellations collapsed into dim embers, as if the galaxy itself had grown weary of remembering its heroes. And there, in the shadow of a broken sun, a cathedral world drifted hollow, derelict, forgotten. Its spires once pierced the heavens in honor of the god emperor. Now they lay shattered, jagged against the black, their stained glass windows bleeding colored light into space. Upon its ruined walls stood a figure in obsidian armor. High Marshal Mordred Thane of the Black Templars, his blade silent at his side, gazed out across the wasteland of stars. Around him, nothing stirred. His warship silent, his brothers gone. Only the wind of a dying world whispered to him now, carrying memories etched in fire and blood. And still he did not pray, because prayer was for the hopeful, and there was no hope in the lost crusade. We truly love and care for you. Before we begin the story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it there? Now grab your coffee and let's get started. The tale begins not in triumph, but in silence. Years before the silence, the Crusade was a beacon of fury, a righteous storm unleashed across the segmentum obscurus. When the High Lords of Terror decreed new Crusade boundaries, after the Great Rift split the galaxy in two, the Black Templars were given a singular holy task to re-establish contact with a line of fortress monasteries lost beyond the veiled stars. But not all orders came from terror. Some were whispered through the cryptic tongues of ancient relics. Some came in the dying words of seers, and some came from dreams. High Marshal Mordred Thane received such a vision. He stood alone in the Hall of Martyrs aboard the Eternal Crusader, his gauntlet pressed to the blackened skull of Sigismund, first High Marshal. The relic trembled. Then it spoke, not in voice, but in fire, a fire behind his eyes, searing and strange, showing him a starless void, a forgotten brother, and the betrayal of everything they once swore to protect. When the dream ended, Mordred issued no proclamation. He simply redirected the crusade. They did not ask why. That was the beauty and the terror of absolute faith. The fleet plunged beyond charted stars. 13 warships, each a tomb of fire and devotion, carrying 30 companies of Black Templars into the shadow of the Eye of Terror. They moved not with hope, but with vengeance sharpened by centuries of war. Their enemies had many names: Heretic, Daemon, Zinnos, but Mordred hunted only one: Brother Chaplain, Malekvale. Vela had vanished 2 centuries ago, during the cleansing of Varut, declared slain, entombed in memory. But now Mordred had seen his face in flame, standing atop a ruined world, beckoning, whether it was truth or curse. Mordred did not care. He would find him. He would know why. Within the Sanctum of Blades, Chaplain Solon knelt before the eternal flame. He was ancient, even among Templars, his armor cracked from centuries of penance, his skull mask chipped and worn. As the fire licked the incense-thick air, he murmured oaths that had not been spoken since the Great Scouring. Behind him stood Castellan Rock, grizzled, pragmatic, ever wary. "This crusade," Rock said quietly, "is not sanctioned by terror." Solon did not move. Neither was Sigismund's first. "You feel it too, then?" "I feel silence, as if the Emperor turns his face away from us." Rock nodded grimly. "And Mordred grows stranger with each day." It was true. Since the vision, Mordred had grown distant, speaking less, staring longer into the void, consulting relics, thought dormant. He issued commands by instinct, by something deeper than reason, and yet none dared question him openly. Not yet. Among the youngest aboard was Initiate Karth, barely 2 decades inducted, still fresh from the School of Progenium. He stood now in the Basilica of Oaths, reciting catechisms with trembling reverence. To him, this was glory. To him, The silence of space was filled with meaning. He idolized Mordred, followed him with a devotion bordering on obsession. The High Marshal had noticed him once, placed a gauntlet on his shoulder, and said only truth does not come from words, only from the sword. Karth had not slept since. The first world they reached was Kaltrax, Omega, a dead forge world, its atmosphere choked with ash. Imperial records claimed it was destroyed in Mem 36, but the Vox beacon they received told otherwise. It was Vela's voice, cracked, hollow, uttered in Binharic overlays and ancient liturgies. It spoke of the silent flame and the shadow of the martyr. Mordred ordered immediate descent. No hesitation. As the Thunderhawks breached the storm-racked sky, what awaited them was not battle, but memory. Cathedrals stood half-buried in soot. Statues of the Emperor wept molten tears from corroded eyes. Tech priests lay fossilized at their altars, their flesh burned circuitry. It was as if the planet had tried to preserve something, or bury it. In the deepest vault, Mordred found it, a blackened scroll tube, etched with the Templar cross. Inside, records sealed in gene-coded script. Impossible to forge, impossible to fake. They bore Chaplain Vale's voice. My brothers, we were betrayed. That night, aboard the flagship, Mordred stared into the void. The relics he'd recovered began to hum softly, as if awakening from a long sleep. Rock warned him not to open them. Solin warned him not to listen. But Mordred had already begun to hear them, and what they said was blasphemy. They told of a crusade erased from Imperial archives, of a relic known as the Soul Reliquary, buried by order of the Inquisition, of Black Templars who had discovered a truth so dark the Ordo Hereticus had damned them to silence, and a Vale who had fled into the warp to protect it. Mordred's fists trembled, not with fear, but with purpose. If what he saw in that vision was true, then Terra had lied. The High Lords had not simply forgotten them, they had sent them to die, sacrificed them. The Black Templars were never meant to return, and still he would. That was the beginning of the Lost Crusade, not with horns, nor banners, but with a whisper from a dead brother, with faith shaken, not broken, with a single question. What do you do when the Emperor's silence is louder than his command? You keep marching, you keep killing, you keep believing, even if you're the last one left to believe. There are wars the Imperium records in golden script, etched into the marble bones of shrines and whispered in the breath of sermons. And there are wars never spoken of, buried beneath 1,000 lies, where the names of the fallen are scrubbed from the stars. This was one of those. The Crusade pushed deeper into the void. Systems unnamed. Stars unlit. For weeks, the Black Templar fleet drifted in realms beyond sanctioned charts. Vox signals returned only static. Geller fields pulsed irregularly. Time twisted, fractured. Some of the crew reported dreams of voices speaking through keyholes. Others awoke with blood on their lips, and no memory of sleep. Still, Mordred gave no pause. There was something ahead, a destination, or perhaps a reckoning. The 13th day in the void brought them to an object not recorded in any Mechanicus archive, a dead forge world orbiting a withered gas giant. The planet had no designation, no transmissions, no orbital defenses. Yet as they approached, the Auspex lit up with a single signature. Brother, I am waiting. The voice was unmistakable.
Malric Vale.
The descent was quiet. Thunderhawks dropped in formation, but no enemy fire came to greet them. The world below was a crypt of blackened iron and glass, where vast manufactoria stood like broken teeth against the dusk sky. Dust storms clawed across the surface, moaning through hollow towers. No life, no resistance. Yet the place bled tension, unseen, palpable. Chaplain Solon led the procession across the ash-covered causeways, censer swinging from his wrist, voice chanting litanies over the Vox to keep the dread at bay. Mordred followed in silence, his eyes always ahead. Behind them came Castellan Rourke, leading squads of sword brethren, and young initiate Carth, clutching his chainsword with white-knuckled hands. He did not speak. His thoughts churned with awe and doubt. The Forge world felt wrong, not tainted by chaos, but by absence. As if the Omnissiah himself had turned his face from the planet and left it to rot in forgotten time. And then they found it. At the heart of the Forge was a cathedral to the Emperor, but its iconography had been torn down, its walls painted with machine oil scripture written in binary lament. In the sanctuary stood a monolithic vault door, sealed by ancient mechanisms pulsing with faint light. Rourke approached the panel, tapping into its interface. The door screamed as it opened, slowly, reluctantly revealing a chamber of staggering silence.
Inside, a throne.
Empty, and beside it the armor of a chaplain, black, worn, scored by bolt fire. Still standing, as if its bearer had simply vanished within it. On the wall behind it was written, in low Gothic burned in by plasma, "I saw the light, and it consumed me." Back aboard the Glory Eternal, Solin knelt in his reliquary cell, hands dripping blood from freshly carved devotion scars. "I should have burned it," he whispered. Voice hoarse, cracked. "We should not have opened the vault. That place was unclean." Rourke leaned against the wall behind him, arms crossed. "You still think Mordred is being led astray?"
"I know he is."
Solin looked up, eyes fever bright. "That armor was not left there by Vale. It was bait, warp-born. There was no body, no soul, just a shell, and that message. We found no warp signatures. Do you trust those readings?" Sullen snapped. "In this place, do you trust anything?" Rourke said nothing for a long while. Then, "Mordred believes Vale is alive. And if he's right, then all of this has meaning. And if he's wrong?" Rourke's face darkened. "Then we are all damned." Elsewhere, Carth stood before the recovered armor. The chaplain's remains, or the absence thereof, had shaken something loose in him. He studied the empty helm. It stared back, and for a fleeting moment he thought he saw movement behind the eyes. A flicker, a reflection. He blinked, and it was gone. But his heart thudded like a war drum. He whispered a prayer. Not to the Emperor, not to the relic, but to the man he once was, before the void had taken him. Mordred watched the stars from the bridge. Around him, the command deck hummed softly with the dying breath of old machine spirits. The servitors blinked. The cogitators churned. The data recovered from the vault was fragmented, pieces of a corrupted litany, combined with a star map encoded in forbidden dialects. What troubled him most, however, was the pattern. The coordinates pointed not to a place, but a path, a procession across the void, leading deeper toward the Eye of Terror. Yet there was one symbol repeated across the map, a black sun, tailored in chains. He recognized it, from memory, from dream, from the relics Sigismund had left behind, long sealed aboard the Eternal Crusader, untouched for centuries. What had Vale found? What heresy could twist even the symbols of the First Crusade? Mordred did not sleep that night, nor the next. The whispers returned, but now they did not threaten. They begged. 3 days passed. Then came the vote. The inner council gathered in the Chapel of Flame, 20 sword brethren, Rideker, Solin, Mordred, Kulth, invited to observe but not to speak. Solin was the first to speak. "We stand at the edge of the eye. The path leads into damnation. We are not sanctioned to continue." Mordred's voice was calm. "We were not sanctioned to abandon our brothers either." Rourke raised an eyebrow. "And if what lies ahead is a trap, then we spring it," Mordred said. With blade and fire, Solin's eyes flared. "And if it is not a trap, but a test, one we were meant to fail?" Silence settled, heavy, thick. Carth's voice broke it, hesitant, youthful. "If we do not go forward, what was the point of all this?" The council looked at him, some with irritation, others with recognition. Mordred gave him a nod. "It is decided," he said. "We continue." That night, the fleet changed course. They crossed the threshold of the stars and entered a sector so ancient even the Eldar refused to name it. Warp storms howled across their path, but the glory eternal cut through them with terrifying ease. In the depths of the navigator's chamber, the third eye opened and screamed. The stars bled. The light twisted. Time folded inward. But the Crusade marched on. They came upon a system without name. 9 planets, all burned, moons shattered, orbiting a dead sun, black as sin, pulsing with unnatural rhythm. In orbit, an Imperium beacon, old too old, and broadcasting a distress signal signed by Chaplain Malric Vale. Mordred stood in silence as the transmission repeated, "Brothers, I failed. Do not follow. The truth is too heavy. The light, it drowns. It drowns." The room darkened. The stars seemed to lean closer, listening. Mordred turned to Rock. "Ready the fleet. Shall I alert Terra?" "No," Mordred whispered. "No more lies." He turned, cloak trailing behind him. "We go alone." The dead sun loomed above them, its corona flickering like a candle struggling against the dark. It pulsed in slow, rhythmic spasms, as if still remembering how to shine. The Templar fleet formed a silent halo around it, guns cold, engines whispering prayers in static. Below them turned the world once known as Agar 9, a long-lost Forge world, redacted from Mechanicus records, entirely absent from inquisitorial charts. And yet the beacon spoke with an imperial signature authenticated by the gene code of Chaplain Malric Vale. "Brothers, do not follow." But they followed, because Templars do not abandon their own, even if they must cross fire and madness to retrieve them. The Thunderhawk's descent was rough. Winds screamed across Agar 9's atmosphere with the fury of a dying machine spirit. Static lightning tore through the clouds. Black rain hissed across ceramite hulls. A strike force of 30 Templars deployed, spearheaded by Mordred himself, with Castellan Rourke and Initiate Karth at his flank. Sullen, grim, and silent marched at the rear, reciting forgotten litanies in a voice hoarse from prayer. What they found was not a planet, but a sarcophagus. The surface of Agar 9 was crusted over in obsidian and steel, cities encased in soot and fused metal. Towering manufactoria stood like mausoleums, their cogitators pulsing with intermittent light. It was as if the world had tried to preserve its own corpse, or hide something within it. Inside a collapsed basilica of the Omnissiah, the strike force discovered the vault doors, carved with sigils half erased by time. Runes traced in blood-red metal spiraled inward like a labyrinth. In the center, a single blinking light. It pulsed in rhythm, with the dead sun above. Rourke approached with caution, sweeping the auspex. No heat signatures, no movement, but the air reads. Wrong. Pressure fluctuates, time distortion possible. Mordred said nothing. He placed his armored palm against the door. It hissed open. The air within was cold, too cold. Not the chill of vacuum, but the sterile cold of memories preserved against time. Ice crusted the floor. Broken servitors were frozen mid-motion, their limbs locked in the act of eternal servitude. The chamber beyond was vast, wider than any cathedral on Terra, lined with monolithic data vaults. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness. In the center stood a singular relic, suspended in gravity locks. It was not imperial, nor Xenos. It was something older, a sarcophagus of light and bone, wrapped in chains of gold-plated adamantium, sealed with wards of both Mechanicus design and High Gothic script. The inscriptions read, "Memory must be chained, truth must be buried, hope must be denied." Mordred stepped forward. The voice of Malric Vale echoed in his mind again, clearer now, urgent, sorrowful. "Brother, I failed. The reliquary cannot be destroyed, only silenced, only forgotten. Solon reached out to touch the chains. Mordred seized his wrist.
No one touches it, he said.
His voice carried more weight than command. It was prophecy. Not until we understand what it is. Rourke stepped forward. We've seen enough. This should be reported to the Ordo.
No, Mordred said. The Ordo buried this place once already. They built this tomb. This is their shame.
Then let them deal with it, Rourke snapped. This isn't our fight anymore. Mordred turned to him slowly. Every time a brother dies in silence, it becomes our fight. Karth remained still. He stared at the sarcophagus, at the faint flicker of light beneath the layers of protective shielding. It pulsed like a heartbeat. And then, as he watched, it changed. For a single moment, the light formed an image. A figure cloaked in black, a sword in hand, stepping into a storm of fire. Karth blinked. The image vanished, but the emotion did not. He felt awe, terror, reverence. He didn't understand why, but he began to weep. That night, aboard the Glory Eternal, the relic was secured in the reliquary vault under Triple Seal protocol. Mordred forbade anyone from approaching it. But the relic spoke without being touched. To each man, it whispered differently. To Rourke, it spoke in the voice of a brother long dead, one he'd abandoned to obey orders. To Solon, it sang in the hymn of a forgotten Primarch, promising a salvation if only he would renounce his fear. To Karth, it said nothing, but he dreamt, and in the dream, he saw terror burning. Mordred sat alone in the Chapel of Flame, staring at a blank wall. He had not removed his helmet in days. He did not pray. He did not sleep. He only listened. The voice of Vale returned, stronger now. Less a whisper, more a confession. I tried to destroy it. I did, but it spoke with the voice of the Emperor. It knew my thoughts before I did. It told me of the first oath, the one we were never meant to remember.
Mordred whispered to himself. What oath?
The silence answered. The one that bound us to a lie. Solon approached Mordred's chambers the next day. The doors remained sealed. He placed a purity seal upon the threshold and whispered, "Do not listen. It is not the voice of the Emperor. It is the echo of regret." Behind the sealed doors, Mordred sat cross-legged before the recovered relic. Its pulsing glow illuminated the black of his armor. "I will not be your puppet," Mordred said. "If you are warp-spawn, I will burn you." The light dimmed, faded, then pulsed once, and from it came a final message. "Come to the cradle." A location appeared, hidden deep within the Eye of Terror. A system long purged from Imperial records, its name wiped from the stars. But Mordred knew it, from Sigismund's private journals, from the black edge of prophecy, from the first days of the First Crusade. He summoned the council. "The relic is real," he said. "It speaks of a place, a vault world, buried in the eye, the cradle. If Vale is alive, he's there." Rourke stood. "No, we've gone too far. We've uncovered something the Order Heretica sealed for a reason. We should turn back." Mordred looked at him. "Turn back to what? The lies of terror, the silence of false faith?" Solon raised his voice. "You are not a prophet, Mordred. You are a warrior. This is not our war." "It has always been our war," Mordred replied. "We were just too blind to see it." He turned to Karth. "You saw it. In the vault. What did it show you?" Karth hesitated, then spoke, his voice barely audible.
"I saw myself holding a sword, but not mine. Larger, older. It felt wrong, but I didn't want to let go."
Mordred nodded. "Really for the cradle." The decision shattered the unity of the Crusade. Rourke refused to follow, citing the Codex and invoking ancient law. A third of the fleet stood with him. Mordred gave him leave. "You may go," he said, "but you will never understand what we found here." Rourke looked him in the eyes. "No, but I'll still pray for you, for all of it." He left that night aboard the Iron Will, taking 7 warships with him. The Black Templars had never splintered, until now. As the fleet of the faithful prepared to enter the Eye, Karth stood in the armory, staring at a blade on the wall. It was an old relic, a sword used by a marshal in the days of the Great Scouring. He reached for it. The hilt burned his palm, but he did not let go. Far above them, the dead sun gave its final breath. It collapsed in silence, forming a black wound in the sky. And from that wound, something watched. Something ancient, something waiting. The stars recoiled as the Black Templar fleet crossed the threshold into the Eye of Terror. It was not a voyage through space. It was a descent into memory. Time frayed. Logic collapsed. The Emperor's light became a fading whisper, replaced by the maddening pulse of uncreation. Astropaths fell silent. Navigators bled from their third eye. But Mordred stood unmoved upon the bridge of the Glory Eternal, eyes locked forward as the tides of the Immaterium licked the hull. Behind him, 24 ships followed, battle barges, strike cruisers, relic bearers, a splinter crusade, heretical in all but name. They had abandoned the Imperium to find something older than it. Karth no longer slept. He no longer needed to. Within him, something had awakened. He did not hear voices like the others. No relic spoke to him. No dreams guided him. But his sword, the ancient marshal's blade he had taken from the vault, now hummed with power. It whispered not in sound, but in instinct. Strike here.
Wait.
Now. He moved with perfect rhythm during drills. Bested initiates, and even some veterans. Castellan sullen began to watch him with a quiet dread. "What has Mordred done to you?" Sullen asked one day in the silence of the reliquary. Karth looked at him, eyes unreadable behind his helmet, and answered only, "He showed me the truth." The fleet approached the coordinates known only as the Cradle, a starless void, a system stripped of celestial bodies, a hollow place where once a sun had burned and 100 planets circled.
Now only one world remained, black, cracked, and cracked again.
It hung in the void like a forbidden relic, its orbit held not by gravity, but by will. Runes flickered across its surface in impossible geometries. Spires the size of hive cities jutted into the void. Oceans of molten data rippled across its surface like liquid metal. The warp screamed around it, but did not touch it. It was shielded, not by Gallifield's, but by something else, something watching. Mordred stood before the assembled war council within the Glory Eternal sanctum. "We descend at dawn cycle," he said. "No orbital bombardment, no invasion. This is not a conquest." "Then what is it?" asked Solon, voice hard. "You lead us deeper into heresy with every breath." "I lead us to answers," Mordred replied, "to what was taken from us." Rock was not there to oppose him. His fleet had turned away back to Imperial space. But Solon remained. So did Karth. And so did most of the fleet's captain. They followed not because they understood, but because they feared not understanding more. The landing zone was a shattered plain of silver bone and black glass. Gravity shifted with every step. Tempests of shrieking data whispers howled across the horizon. Templars advanced in disciplined columns, each warrior reciting litanies aloud, each voice a tether to sanity. In the distance rose the final vault. The Vault Primus, 10 kilometers high, 30 wide. Its gates were shaped like a stylized aquila, broken down the center, not carved, torn. They entered. Inside the vault there was no sound, not silence, absence. Even the vox links failed. Motion slowed, reality thickened, as if each step required defiance of some hidden truth. Then they found the corpses, dozens of them, Black Templar armor, Crusader seals intact. Some were skeletal, others perfectly preserved, as if dead only hours. All bore the insignia of Chaplain Malric Vale's lost crusade, but none bore signs of combat.
No wounds, no trauma.
Only expressions of unbearable ecstasy frozen on their faces. Solon stepped back. This is wrong. This is not war. This is seduction. Karth stepped closer and knelt before one of the dead. I know him, he whispered. He trained me, taught me the litany of iron. Solon stared. He died 500 years ago. Mordred pressed onward. The deeper they went, the more unreal the world became. They passed through halls of mirrored smoke, where each Templar saw themselves not as they were, but as they could have been. Heroes, traitors, gods, monsters. Karth's reflection showed a crowned warrior standing atop Terror, wrapped in robes of flame. He smashed the mirror with his fist. They descended a spiral of light. At the center waited Malric Vale, alive. He was no longer in armor. He wore robes of white and gold, woven with circuitry that shimmered like star silk. His body was lean, scarred but untouched by age. His eyes burned like dying suns.
Mordred approached.
You were lost. That was found, Vale answered. You called to us. I invited you. Silence. Then Vale gestured, and the chamber shifted. They stood not in a vault, but in a vision, a recreation of the First Crusade, of Sigismund, of the Emperor's earliest oaths. Templars long dead marched across burning worlds. Butchered Xenos empires fell before their blades. Yet it was not triumph they carried in their hearts. It was grief, because the oaths they swore at the dawn of the Great Crusade were not to the Imperium. They were to him, to something that had come before the Emperor, something older, something forgotten, the original flame. Vale whispered, We are not his warriors, we are his jailers. We fight not to save mankind, but to contain its truth. Mordred staggered back. Lie. Vale smiled. Truth is not loyal. It is not imperial. It burns, regardless of who holds it. Solon raised his bolt pistol. Heretic. But Vale did not flinch. He raised a hand, and every Templar in the chamber dropped to one knee, except Mordred and Karth. Vahila's voice thundered. I saw the truth at the edge of the cradle. I saw the being we call the Emperor before he took form, a creature of will, memory, and fire. He built the Imperium, not as a kingdom, but as a prison, for himself, for us. He turned to Karth.
You have felt it, haven't you? The blade. It is not a weapon. It is a key.
Karth stood frozen. The vaults are not to protect mankind from chaos. They are to protect chaos from us. Mordred spoke at last.
What do you want, Vale?
Velia's expression was soft, almost kind. I want release, for all of us. The oath must be broken. The flame must rise again. Karth stepped forward. He unsheathed the blade. It glowed with impossible light. Lines of forgotten script shimmered across its edge. Neither low Gothic, nor any tongue known to man. Vale smiled. Strike the seal. A pulsing core of crystal rose from the vault's heart. Chains of light bound it. Screaming voices echoed from within. A billion souls crying for freedom. Solon screamed. Don't. Karth raised the blade and paused, then turned to Mordred. The marshal gave no command, only watched. Karth turned back and drove the blade downward. The chamber exploded in light. Reality cracked. Every Templar aboard, every ship screamed as memory returned. Memory of a war before time. Of an emperor not yet born, already dying. Of oaths made not for salvation, but for forgetting. When the light faded, the vault was gone. So was Vale. Only Mordred and Karth remained, standing amidst ash and silence. The others were gone, cast back into the fleet, or into madness. Mordred turned to his protege. Do you understand now? Karth nodded. Tears burned down his cheeks. Yes, we are not the Emperor's weapons. He looked at the broken blade. We are his chains. The fleet emerged from the eye 1 week later, changed, silent. Solon took his own life, scrolling warnings in his blood across the walls of his ship. Many Templars refused to speak. Others burned their own icon. But Mordred said nothing. He locked himself within the glory eternal, where he began to write, not a prayer, not a war record, but a book of fire, of chains, of what lies beyond even the throne. The glory eternal drifted alone among the shattered stars, a beacon of unyielding faith in a galaxy steeped in shadow. But the faith it carried was no longer the simple flame of conviction. It was a forge fire, consuming and reforging all who dared look into its depth. Mordred sat at the prow, the weight of the revelations pressing against his chest like a death shroud. The book he had begun was no chronicle of valor or glory. It was a litany of chains, every oath that had bound humanity in silence, every secret buried beneath millennia of faith. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Inside, the heart of a crusade beat uncertain. Karth approached the marshal quietly, sword sheathed but still humming with latent power. "You write to remember," he said softly. Mordred nodded. "And to warn, the Imperium is not what we thought, not what we were told. We are shackled to an eternal lie. But if we speak, if we reveal the truth," Karth's voice faltered, "what will become of us?" Mordred's eyes, hidden behind blackened ceramite, gleamed. "We will become traitors, heretics, apostates, but we will be free." Solin's death still haunted the corridors. The chaplain who had chosen silence over truth, who had burnt his own soul rather than face the abyss. His blood-stained warnings had been scrawled in the forgotten tongue of the Mechanicus, but their meaning was clear. Some chains are forged in darkness so deep that no light can reach them. In the days that followed, the surviving Templars wrestled with the ghosts of their own loyalty. Rock's fleet had returned to Imperial space, denouncing Mordred as lost to heresy. They called for purge and holy fire, for the cleansing of the glory eternal, and all who sailed with her. But Mordred refused to answer. He sought out Initiate Karth, and together they walked the decks beneath the silent stars, speaking only of what had been and what must come. "The chain," Mordred said one night, voice a low rumble, "is not just a shackle. It is a key, a burden, and a promise." Karth listened, feeling the weight of those words in his bones. "You asked me once why I followed this path," Mordred continued. "Not for glory, not for honor, but to carry the burden of truth, even if it breaks me." Outside the ship, a storm gathered on the horizon, not of weather, but of war. In the void between stars, traitors and loyalists prepared for the inevitable clash. News arrived that Rourke's fleet had been sanctioned by the High Lords of Terror to hunt Mordred's crusade down, to extinguish the blasphemy before it could spread. Mordred read the reports quietly. "Their chains will bind them," he said. "But ours will shatter." Among the Templars, divisions deepened. Some burned their icons, casting off the symbols of an imperium, built on lies. Others doubled down on tradition, clinging to faith as a shield against despair. Karth found himself torn between both worlds, haunted by dreams of fire and ash, of light swallowed by darkness. One night alone in the chapel, he whispered a vow, not to the Emperor but to the relic they had uncovered, to break the chain. The days blurred into weeks. Mordred's book grew thicker, its pages heavy with revelation and sorrow. He penned the truth of the first oath, of the original flame, of a cosmos where the Emperor's throne was less a seat of power than a prison forged in sacrifice and betrayal. Each word was a spark, each line a call to arms. But even as the book spread through the fleet, hope burned dim. The final day before the clash arrived. Mordred stood before the assembled captains of the fleet, his voice a calm storm. "We do not fight for an empire that enslaves us. We fight for a future, forged in truth. For a crusade, not of chains, but of freedom. We will be branded heretics. We will be hunted, but the light we carry will never die." The fleet responded with a cry that shook the void, a sound born of both defiance and desperation. Karth raised his sword high, the ancient blade blazing with unholy fire. And in that moment, the lost crusade became a reckoning. The silence before battle stretched like a shroud across the void. The glory eternal and her loyal warships bore the weight of centuries, legends, and the kindling spark of rebellion. Yet, even as the engines hummed with quiet determination, unseen fractures cracked deep within the soul of the crusade. Not all were prepared to follow Mordred's path. Sullen's death had left a scar, but the absence of his voice was quickly replaced by murmurs of dissent. Within the shadows of the fleet, whispers grew louder, echoes of old faith clashing with new truth. Captain Halric, a veteran of countless crusades, gathered like-minded brethren in the armor halls. His words were like fire on dry tinder. This is not the Black Templars we swore to serve. The Emperor's light does not bend to mortal rebellion. Mordred's heresy will drown us all. Across the deck, Karth moved among the ranks, listening, not to the war calls or the war prayers, but to the unspoken fears hidden behind stoic faces. He saw the tremble in young initiates struggling to reconcile faith and doubt. He saw hardened veterans clench fists against the growing storm inside their hearts. And he saw Mordred, the reluctant flame-bearer, bearing a crown of thorns, forged in revelation and loss.
Mordred's chambers were a crucible of silence.
The book lay open, its ink a mosaic of history and prophecy. He traced a finger along a passage. Chains do not break with violence alone. They shatter when the bearer accepts their weight, when sacrifice becomes freedom. He did not believe freedom would come without cost. On the eve of battle, the council gathered. Halric confronted Mordred openly. Your crusade fractures us. Your truth divides brothers. Are we to die, not by enemy blade, but by our own doubt? Mordred's gaze was steady. The old way is broken. If we cling to chains forged in lies,
We doom ourselves to eternal night.
the argument spiraled, words sharpened to blades. Roke's loyalists broadcast warnings. Heretics aboard the Glory Eternal. Their fleet encroached fast. Desperation seeped into the veins of the crusade. Karth found himself caught in the eye of the storm. He sought Solin's reliquary, placing a hand upon the blood-stained walls. A silent vow passed his lips. I carry your burden, brother. Your sacrifice will not be in vain. The battle came not with fire, but with ice. As Roke's fleet emerged from warp, the Glory Eternal prepared. But the fight was as much within as without. Old brothers turned on each other. Chainsword met chainsword. Brother against brother. Mordred's voice echoed above the chaos. Remember the oath. Remember the truth. Our chains are not our prison. They are our path. Karth charged, sword ablaze, cutting through doubt and steel alike. He faced Halric amid the fray. Their blades clashed, sparks flying like dying stars. Neither yielded. The battle ended in blood and silence.
Half the fleet scattered.
The rest were scarred, broken, but united, for better or worse. Mordred stood amidst the ruin. His crusade was no longer simply a war against foes in the void. It was a war for the very soul of the Black Templars, and the flames of that war would not soon die. The shattered fleet drifted through the void, scarred and weary, their armor etched with the soot of internal war. The Glory Eternal bore the weight of command. But even the strongest chains are tested by storms that rage unseen. They approached the forsaken Forge world of Aegir 9 once more, the place where the lost Crusade's true nightmare had begun. Yet this time, it was not the vaults they sought, but what lurked beneath them. Aegir 9's surface was a war-torn graveyard, but its underlayers whispered secrets. Deep within the labyrinthine forges, ancient machines still hummed with a corrupted life. Servitors long dead stirred, driven by remnants of forbidden programming. Mordred led the strike force, his presence a beacon in the darkness. Karth followed, blade glowing faintly in the shadows. Be vigilant, Mordred warned. This world is not a tomb. It's a trap. They descended through spiraling corridors, the air thick with the stench of ozone and rust. As they moved deeper, memories pressed upon them like ghosts. Hallucinations flickered, visions of the First Crusade, the black armor of lost brothers, screams echoing across time. Karth felt the relic sword pulse against his side, a constant reminder of the oath they carried. At the heart of the forge, they found the Mechanicum's last sanctuary, a cavernous hall housing a machine god's tomb, its surface etched with the sigils of the Omnissiah and blasphemous runes entwined. A cold voice crackled from the vox. Unwelcome intruders detected. This domain is sealed. Steel doors slammed shut, locking them inside. From the shadows emerged the Iron Heralds, once a proud Mechanicum guard, now twisted by centuries of isolation and madness. Their bodies were fused with arcane weaponry, their eyes glowing with a terrible light. Those who awaken the past shall inherit its curse, the herald captain intoned. Battle erupted. Chainswords tore through corrupted limbs. Bolters roared against ancient armor. But the enemy was relentless, driven by a fanaticism born of despair and lost purpose. Mordred fought with calculated fury, each strike a prayer for redemption. Karth moved like a shadow, his sword singing as it cleaved through steel and bone. Amidst the carnage, a new revelation struck. The vault below the forge housed a catalyst core, a device capable of reshaping reality itself. Vale had sought it. The Order Hereticus had hidden it. And now Mordred faced a choice that could fracture the Crusade forever. Solon's voice echoed again, a ghost of conscience. Power such as this consumes all who wield it. Mordred hesitated. The desire to end the war, to break the chains of eternal conflict, tempted him. But the cost loomed. Karth stepped beside him. We either control it, or it controls us. Mordred nodded. The fate of the Crusade would hinge on the balance between salvation and ruin. The Forge world trembled. The catalyst core pulsed, awakening ancient forces. And as the storm broke, a shadow loomed from the depths, an enemy older than the Crusade itself. Something waiting to reclaim what was lost. Beneath Agar 9, buried deeper than even the oldest cogitators could recall, the earth trembled with awakening purpose. The catalyst core pulsed with impossible energy, ancient, terrible, and divine. Something stirred in its presence. Something vast. Something forbidden. Mordred stood before it, helmet off, eyes reflecting golden light. It's not a weapon, he whispered. It's a throne. Karth approached slowly, blade sheathed, breath held. And whoever sits upon it becomes what? Mordred didn't answer. They were no longer alone. From the vault's depths it rose, not a daemon, not a machine, but the last of the god engines, a dormant ordinatus absolvus, a forgotten creation of the dark age of technology, now fused with tech heresy, its form towering with blasphemous majesty. Its plating bore symbols of both the Mechanicum and something older, alien, far beyond even the warp's reach. Its mind was fractured, yet aware. It spoke in binary and tongues lost to all, save the void. I was king of stars before flesh walked upon terra. Who dares awaken me? The Black Templars raised their weapons. Karth reached for his blade, but Mordred did not flinch. He stepped forward, past the firing lines, and extended his hand, not in command, but in understanding. I do not seek your chains, he said. Only your truth. The machine paused. The ears stuttered. Reality twisted. Visions poured into their minds. Terror before the Emperor. The first machines who thought. The betrayal of the men of iron. The sealing of the catalyst. And the final truth. The god engines were not tools. They were kings. And they remembered everything. Above ground, alarms screamed across the glory eternal. The Forge world began to quake. Tectonic plates shifting as the Ordinatus began to rise through rock and steel. Sister Commander Talida of the Reformed Fleet transmitted a warning. Mordred, the planet is waking. It will tear itself apart. But Mordred answered with only 2 words. Let it rise. Within the vault, Karth saw it clearly now. This was never about a relic. This was never about faith or heresy. It was about inheritance. The Imperium had inherited a galaxy it did not understand. The Black Templars had inherited a crusade they never questioned. Now Mordred would inherit a god. The Ordinatus demanded a price, a sacrifice of will, of soul, of purpose. Mordred stepped forward to accept. Karth tried to stop him, tried to reason. Once you bond to it, you are no longer who you were. Mordred's voice was resolute. I was never anything but a weapon. This gives me purpose. And with that he placed his hand on the core. The transformation was not physical, not yet, but something changed. Mordred's eyes glowed with internal fire. The Ordinatus accepted him, and through their union, it began to rise, an entire mountain of ancient death, becoming reborn under his will. Aegir, 9 cracked. The sky darkened. The god engine broke the surface, towering miles high, its frame shedding centuries of rust and decay. The fleet above watched in awe and horror. Talida whispered, "By the throne, what has he become?" Karth emerged from the ruins, battered and hollow. He stared at Mordred standing atop the Ordinatus, wind ripping across his armor. A demigod reborn. But Karth saw not victory. He saw doom. The Vox opened. Mordred's voice now echoed like thunder.
I am no longer Crusader.
I am no longer knight. I am the reckoning. Let the galaxy burn. The stars trembled. Above the ruined crust of Aegir 9, the reborn Ordinatus Absolvus cast its shadow across the void like the scythe of an executioner. And upon its crown stood Mordred, no longer simply martial, no longer merely Astartes, but something altogether other. Something ancient, something terrible. Across the fleet, no one moved. Even the most hardened veterans, forged in centuries of warfare, hesitated. What now rose before them was not salvation, it was judgment. The Vox relays lit up across the scattered remnants of the Crusade fleet. Ships signaled confusion, fear, dissent. Some hailed Mordred as a messiah. Others whispered heresy. Aboard the Glory Eternal, Karth stood in silence, armor scorched, soul fraying. He stared at the rising god engine and felt the weight of a choice pressing upon him like a relic blade at his throat. In the chamber of command, Sister Commander Talida turned to him. We must destroy it, now, before it leaves orbit. Karth shook his head slowly. Destroy him, he said, voice brittle. Or save what he has become. Talida narrowed her eyes. Don't let loyalty blind you. Karth didn't respond, because he didn't know if he was loyal anymore. Loyal to Mordred, to the Black Templars, or to the dream of the Imperium itself. Mordred's voice rang out once more, broadcast across the entire fleet. Brothers, sisters, ours was a crusade without end. We bled for a throne that no longer speaks.
We killed for gods who do not answer.
But now, I offer you an end. Not in defeat, but in dominion. The message ended, and with it, the fleet fractured. 3 strike cruisers, led by Marshal Seren, activated warp drives and fled, declaring Mordred apostate. Others, those broken by the Crusade's failures, turned their bows toward Aegir 9, ready to kneel. But Karth prepared for war, not against chaos, not against Xenos, but against the only brother who had ever mattered to him. In the silent halls of the Glory Eternal, Karth knelt before the Templars' sacred shrine. The Eternal Crusade banner hung in the darkness, torn and faded. He placed his sword before him and whispered the old vow. No peace, no remorse, no forgiveness. Then he rose and swore a new oath. For the soul of the Crusade, I will face the one who led it. As the Ordinatus began to move, the crust of Aegir 9 shattered beneath its titanic stride. With every step, the machine god bled radiation and madness. Systems across the Mechanum sector flickered, servitors screamed in binary, and astropaths went blind from the psychic shockwaves. Mordred had become more than a commander. He was now a catalyst. And still, he hesitated. Within the God Engine's command node, Mordred stared into the core's blazing light. Visions danced across his mind. Past, future, alternate possibilities. In one, he saw the galaxy united under his rule. In another, he saw his brothers burn. And in the last, he saw Karth, standing with sword drawn, tears in his eyes. He turned away from the vision. There is no future in mercy, he muttered. But part of him, some human fragment buried under centuries of warfare, still remembered what it meant to care, still remembered why they had crusaded. And then, like a shadow cast by truth itself, Karth arrived. In a thunderhawk painted in the ash of holy worlds, he descended through fire and static, landing upon the upper carapace of the Ordinatus as it moved through Aegon IX's final storm. He emerged alone, cape torn, sword sheathed. Mordred was already waiting. No word, only silence. The wind howled across the titanic structure. Dust and warp energy crackled like lightning across the black sky. Two brothers stood across from each other, both forged by the same war, both broken by the same betrayal.
You shouldn't have come, Mordred said.
I had no choice, Karth replied. You're still my brother. Mordred's jaw tightened. No, not anymore. He ignited his power sword. They clashed like thunder meeting steel. Karth moved fast, wounds forgotten, memories fueling every strike. Mordred fought like a god, his blade guided by the will of the core, strength beyond biology in every parry. Sparks lit the dark as war raged atop a god's back. Blow after blow echoed into the void. Karth's blade cut deep, but Mordred never fell. Mordred's fury lashed out, but Karth never broke, until finally at the heart of the core spire, they locked blades' eyes locked across inches. Then finish it. Mordred roared, "End me!" But Karth's blade never fell, because in that moment, he understood. Mordred wasn't possessed, he wasn't mad. He was alone, just like every crusader who had ever believed too deeply in a broken dream. And so Karth dropped his sword. Mordred's eyes widened. "No," he said, voice cracking. "You don't get to forgive me." But Karth just smiled through bloodied lips. "We were never meant to win, brother, only to endure." And with those words he reached toward the core, not in defiance, but in surrender. A blinding light engulfed them. The Ordinators shuddered. The fleet above felt it, something shifting, unraveling. And then the signal was gone. For days, nothing stirred. Then, on the 9th dawn, the ruins of Aegon IX settled. The god engine no longer moved. Its core was silent. Its pilot gone. But from the ashes, a single figure emerged. Karth, alone, wounded, carrying two swords, and one final vow upon his lips. The crusade is not over, but its soul is saved. The silence after Aegon IX was not peace. It was something stranger, something deeper, like the moment after a blade is drawn, but before the killing blow falls. Suspended, tense, waiting, across segmentum obscurus. The mechanicum sealed the borders. No explanation, no message, just cold, red sigils blinking across astropathic void channels. Quarantine initiated. No entry permitted. What truly happened aboard the Ordinatus Absolvus was sealed beneath metric tons of adamantium, oath-locked vaults, and forbidden rites. But rumors flowed like blood. They whispered of a Black Templar who killed a god, of a god engine that walked into silence and never spoke again, of a crusade that defied the will of terror. The Imperium, vast and uncaring, turned its eye elsewhere. There were more important wars, brighter crusades, simpler stories, but some still remembered. Karth wandered the stars. He did not return to the chapter, did not answer the High Marshal's summons. He bore two blades and no heraldry. He left no marks in battle records. The worlds fell behind him, liberated and sanctified by fire. He became a myth, a silent brother, a shadow of the eternal crusade. Once, in the catacombs of Drevar's Reach, a librarian of the Crimson Fists, found him praying before the shattered relics of a forgotten saint. "You were there," the Psyker said. "And Agur." Karth only nodded. "Did he fall to chaos?" The librarian pressed. Karth looked up slowly, eyes weary. "No," he said, "and nothing more." But Mordred's legacy did not end in silence. Something remained, buried deep beneath Agur 9. Beneath the crust and ruined forges, the core still pulsed. Not with warp taint, not with AI, but with memory. A consciousness shaped not by logic, but by oath, bound in sacrifice, crystallized in pain. The last prayer of a crusader who gave everything to forge meaning from a broken imperium. Some say, the core speaks.
Not in words, but in dreams.
To those who have lost faith, to warriors at the edge of surrender, to broken sons of the Emperor who stand at the brink and whisper, why? In those moments, the voice returns. A voice of fire and sorrow. A voice that once called itself Mordred. Back within the halls of the Phalanx, the Black Templars argued over the fate of the Lost Crusade. Marshal Seren, who had fled, demanded censure, banishment, erasure from the rolls of honor. But others, older, quieter, refused. Chaplain Vorten, ancient and blind, stood before the assembled council. "I will not forget," he said, "because forgetting is heresy of another kind." And so the name of the Lost Crusade was never written into the official annals. But neither was it destroyed. Instead, it became a whisper, a test told to neophytes before their first battle. If your brother fell to darkness, would you raise your blade? Or your hand? No answers, only silence. 100 years passed. Then 2, then 5, and still, the stars did not forget. In the desolate void between Segmentum Pacificus and the Eye of Terror, a single crusade ship appeared. No transponder, no heraldry, only a banner, a black cross over an open hand. It did not speak, it did not hail, but it brought war where needed, salvation where earned, and judgment where betrayed. It became known only as the Silent Blade. Its master wore armor scorched beyond recognition. Its warriors bore no name, only a single vow etched into their shoulder plates. No peace, no remorse, no forgiveness, and still mercy. It is said that upon the shrine world of Kalios, during the night of burning saints, the Silent Blade arrived without warning. The sky cracked open, and black-armored warriors descended into the heart of the demonic incursion. Where Imperial Guard had failed, where sisters had died screaming, they prevailed, not with fury, but with purpose. After the battle, a lone figure stood before the broken cathedral doors. The Sister Hospitaller approached him. "Who are you?" she asked. He handed her a relic. It was a blade. The name etched into it was ancient, forgotten. Mordred. He said nothing, and vanished. Legends grew. Some claimed the Silent Blade was a punishment detail, a place where fallen crusaders found redemption. Others swore they were Mordred's true heirs, secretly blessed by the Emperor himself. The truth was simpler. They were brothers who had seen the worst of the galaxy, and chose to fight anyway. Not because they would win, but because someone had to stand. And deep beneath a Garnine tomb of light and memory, the core still pulsed. Not with domination, not with ambition, but with something older. Something purer. A single phrase repeated like prayer. Endure. Endure. The Lost Crusade never truly ended, because no crusade ever does. Not while even one brother still carries the flame. Not while the stars still scream. Not while hope can still burn in the darkest corners of a dying galaxy. There are those who say that all things end. That even in the grim darkness of the far future, there is a limit to suffering, to battle, to memory. But for the Black Templars who do not forget, who cannot forget, there is no such mercy. The crusade endured, and so does the wounded carved. On the world of Tarsis Ultra, 300 years after the fall of Agadir 9, a relic was uncovered in the ruins of a Machinekis observatory, a data shard half melted by plasma fire. On it, a single image survived. It showed a warrior, kneeling, blade shattered before him, armor cracked open, banners burning behind. No name, no time stamped. Just a single sigil burned into the background wall. The cross and the hand. It caused schism among the high lords of terror, within the ecclesiarchy, even across the scattered crusade fleets of the Black Templars. To the Mechanicus, it was a ghost, a threat reborn. To the Inquisition, it was a mistake, one they had buried. To the Templars, it was proof that the lost crusade was not lost at all. High Marshal Helbrecht, centuries into his reign, summoned the ancient conclave. The Hall of Blades lit once more with the flicker of 1,000 candles, each flame representing a dead brother. Veterans from Cadia, Armageddon, and unspoken campaigns arrived in silence. All bore scars. Most wore black. Some did not speak at all. They had seen the truth beneath the surface. Chaplain Gerald, who had once served under Mordred as a mere initiate, stood before the conclave. His voice was gravel, his faith unchanged. "I was there," he said, pointing to the shard. "This is not heresy, it is a warning." A pause, heavy. They broke the code and remade it. The debate raged for 7 nights. Some called Mordred a traitor, others a prophet. Some wished to hunt down the silent blade and finish what the Inquisition began. Others said, "Let them be. Let them carry what we cannot." In the end, Helbrecht gave his judgment. Simple, absolute. Let no Templar raise sword against another. So it was done. The lost crusade remained unspoken. But it was felt in the weight of oaths, in the silences after prayers, in the unmarked tombs of ships that never returned. Then came the Ravening, an event without warning, without explanation. Across 5 sectors, entire star systems went dark. Not to chaos, not to Xenos, but to entropy. Stars collapsed, gravity bled, time fractured, and at the center, a single signal repeated again and again in binary. "This is Brother Lieutenant Carth. This is the last oath. The blade remained." The Mechanicus called it a data virus. The Inquisition burned entire archives, trying to silence it. But the Black Templars listened, because the voice was his. Carth III, their shame, their brother. What happened next became legend. On the moon world of Gravemarch, where the dead outnumbered the living 10-1, the silent blade appeared. No warp signature, no Geller fields, just presence. Their ship, black as Voidstone, hovered in orbit, without orbiting. It defied gravity, physics, even logic. And then they descended. The population, plagued by madness from the collapsing stars, fell to their knees. Not in worship, but in awe. The silent blade brought no sermons. Only a message burned into the gates of the planetary chapel. "Endure! Endure!" A witness, an old scribe of the Adeptus Ministorum, recorded what followed. He wrote, "They moved like death and light at once. I saw them heal the dying. I saw them destroy the wicked. I saw one pause beside a starving child, place a gauntlet on her brow, and the child smiled. Then they left, without a word, and the stars calm. The Inquisition could no longer ignore them. A full-order Hereticus fleet was dispatched. They found only wreckage, frozen blood, and a message scrawled in Astartes-grade ceramite. We do not run. We wait. And wait they did, for the galaxy, ever dying, ever burning, would return to them, in time, and it did. When the 14th Black Crusade of Abaddon reached its apex, and the Bastion worlds began to fall one by one, it was not Geliman or the Custodes who reached Virelia, the last bastion between the Eye and the Segmentum Solar. It was the Silent Blade. One ship, 17 Astartes, and Carth at their front. He wore no helmet. His face was ravaged by time, sorrow, and the wounds of faith. He spoke only one sentence to the defenders. "This is where we hold." And they did. Virelia did not fall. It burned. It broke. But it did not fall. And in the aftermath, Scavengers and Adeptus survivors discovered something in the ruins of the command tower. A blade, two-handed, engraved with thousands of names. Across the hilt, the same phrase seen before: no peace, no remorse, no forgiveness, and still mercy. They placed the blade in the Hall of Blades. None touched it, none spoke of it, but all felt it. The Lost Crusade was never written in the Codex Astotus, never carved into the tablets of Mars, never sung in the hymns of terror, but it lived in the moments between victory and defeat,
In the silences before battle.
in the fire that keeps even the most broken warrior walking, because some wounds never heal, and some crusades never end. There are moments that bend the galaxy, not with sound or war or fire, but with silence. And it was in such a moment, aboard the dread ruins of Ordinatus Absolvus, that High Marshal Mordred lost, hunted, betrayed, saw something no Astartes was meant to see. The records are fragmented. Some from corrupted Mechanicus logs, others whispered in the dreams of psychers who went mad days later, a few etched into the bones of executed scribes. But all of them, every last one, point to the same hour, the hour of the sightless god. And it began, not with chaos, but with light. The ship Ordinatus Absolvus had been a myth even before the Horus Heresy, a colossal hybrid vessel created not for war, but for observation. Designed in secret by a triad of rogue magi, it was meant to pierce the layers of reality itself, to see beyond the veil of the materium. It vanished during the War of the False Primarch. Its last transmission, a scream lasting 17 minutes. Thousands of years later, Mordred found it. Or perhaps it found him. When Mordred and his veterans first boarded the derelict vessel during the Lost Crusade, the ship had been inert, hollowed of life and motion. No enemy, no decay, no entropy, just a single pulsing light emanating from the central observatory chamber. Mordred ordered all Vox signals cut. Only he entered. He walked alone. What happened inside remains one of the deepest secrets of the Silent Blade. No recordings survived. No memories remained intact. But Karth, broken and weeping in his final confessional years later, offered this. He walked in with purpose. He crawled out, blind in one eye. And yet somehow he saw more than any of us ever would. According to Karth, Mordred emerged after 6 hours in total silence. He spoke no words for 3 days. Then, at the gathering of his crusade fleet, before battle lines, before the split of faith and heresy, he said this: "There is no victory, only delay. And yet we must delay the end, because he cannot stop what is coming." They asked who. Mordred did not answer, but he looked upward, past steel, past stars, as if into the heart of something vast, ancient, and weeping. Some among the veterans began calling it the god behind the curtain.
Not chaos, not the Emperor.
Something older, a being that watched, not with malice, but with regret. A being bound by time, unable to intervene. A prisoner of causality. It had shown Mordred a vision of the galaxy as it truly was. A tapestry not of light and war, but of futility. Of empires born only to rot. Of heroes made to die forgotten. Of purpose twisted until it strangles its bearer. And yet, Mordred did not stop fighting. He did not fall to despair. He turned to his brothers, his chaplains, even the prisoners held in the brig. He asked only one thing of them: speak not of faith, speak not of war, speak only of endurance. That was when the changes began. The blacking out of chapter heraldry, the silencing of war hymn, the breaking of ritual purity laws, the refusal to pray before battle. To many, especially to the Ordo Hereticus, these were signs of corruption. To those who followed Mordred to the end, they were something else, an evolution. But even evolutions must break. By the time the Inquisition caught up with the Lost Crusade, Mordred's strength had begun to fail, not in body, but in will. He had seen what lay beyond the veil, and it stared back at him. The final moments of Mordred's life were not witnessed by any Inquisitor, Custodian, or Lord of Terror. They were preserved only in the fractured memories of Karth, pieced together from broken speech and half-mad mutterings after the siege of Varelia. Karth said. He knelt beneath the broken stars. He drew his blade, not to fight, but to plant it into the soil. And he whispered, "Let this world forget me, but let it remember the stand." Then he looked to me and said, "You will carry the wound, not for glory, not for doctrine, but because someone must." Karth never saw Mordred die, only the flare of white light behind his eyes. And silence, the kind of silence that fills a cathedral long after the last believer has fallen. No body was recovered, no relic found. Only a single relic blade, half-sheathed in ash and sorrow, marked with the names of the fallen, and one more etched hastily across the bottom. Mordred. For centuries after, across the scattered fleets of the Black Templars, rumors persisted that Mordred walks still, that he is no longer a status, nor spirit, but memory incarnate wandering battlefields unnoticed, whispering into the ears of those about to break. Endure. In the most remote fortress monastery of the Silent Blade, hidden in the void between sectors, there stands a sealed room. No records list it, no adept speaks of it. Inside, nothing but a chair, and on that chair sits a figure, motionless, clad in black power armor, unadorned, face hidden beneath layers of dust. No heartbeat, no breath, but his eyes never close. And in moments of galactic stillness, when the warp howls go quiet and the stars dim, a voice can be heard, impossibly distant. He waits. Mordred's legacy was never sanctified. His name struck from many rolls. But the Inquisition failed, because faith is not always born of truth. Sometimes it is born of refusal. Refusal to collapse. Refusal to forget. Refusal to surrender to an ending that cannot be avoided. And so the Lost Crusade became myth. But within that myth, a deeper truth was buried. That even in the face of certain doom, a single soul, flawed, fallen, heretical, can light a fire so enduring that not even time itself can put it out. Karth's final transmission, before disappearing into the warp storm surrounding the dying system of Antares Reach, said only this: "I remember the light, I remember the wound, and I remember him." He did not promise victory. He promised meaning, and by his broken throne, that is enough. The void was silent. Not the stillness of peace, but the heavy quiet before the storm's first roar. Karth stood at the helm of the Silent Blade, a lone figure among shadows cast by dying stars. His armor bore scars deeper than flesh could explain, etched not only by battles, but by time itself, a tapestry of losses and shattered oaths. Behind him, the remnants of a dying sector whispered of ruin. Worlds smoldered in war. Inquisition fleets clashed with Xenos scourges. And somewhere in the darkness, an ancient dread awoke. Karth knew this was no longer about crusade or honor. It was survival. The fleet had no command, but his. The warriors had no orders but his. They were echoes of a forgotten war, carrying a flame. Mordred had lit. A fire burned not to conquer, but to endure. Before battle, Karth gathered his warriors in the ruined cathedral of Varelia. The stained glass was shattered, the pews burned, the altar cracked. Yet the words he spoke cut through the dust like a blade. "We stand not for glory." He lifted the twin blades, one ancient and chipped, the other shining with the light of 1,000 suns. "We stand not for victory." His voice rose, trembling with the weight of centuries. "We stand to endure." The room was silent. Warriors looked at one another, eyes filled with doubt and fire. And then a single voice answered, "For the crusade." Then another, "For the lost brothers," until the cathedral roared with 100 voices. The final oath was sworn. Outside, the Xenos fleets broke through the void screens. The horizon cracked with fire and fury. Yet Karth did not falter. He raised his blades, stepping into the fray like a storm made flesh. The battle was apocalyptic. Starships exploded in waves of light. Xenos war engines crushed planets beneath their feet. And in the midst, Karth fought. His sword moved faster than thought. His armor deflected plasma and claws alike, each strike a prayer, each parry a command. But the enemy was many, and time was short. As the silent blade burned, Karth was surrounded. A monstrous Xenos warlord, taller than 2 men, bearing blades of corrupted ceramite, faced him. Their duel was brutal. The ground beneath them cracked, shields shattered. And still, neither yielded. With a roar, Karth summoned his final strength. He feinted left, then drove his blade deep into the Xenos chest.
The warlord gasped.
Karth whispered a vow. No peace, and twisted the blade. The beast fell, but victory came at a cost. Karth's armor was breached. Blood seeped through, pain stabbed sharp and endless. He fell to one knee. As the enemy closed in for the final blow, a voice echoed, not from any man, but from the core, buried deep beneath Aegir 9. A whisper that reached across space and time. Endure. Karth's eyes flared with defiance. He rose, blade raised for the last stand. The Xenos screamed, the stars wept, and in that moment, Karth became more than warrior. He became legend. His last act was not of war, but of hope. He shattered the warlord's blade, threw down his swords, and called out to his brothers, scattered across the void.
Hold the line.
His warriors rallied. The silent blade burned brighter. And though the stars dimmed and the war raged on, Karth's voice was carried across the void.
A promise.
A command. A final prayer. The lost crusade had one last stand. And though the galaxy forgot, the flame endured. The war screamed like a dying sun. Flames licked the void. Shields shattered like brittle bone. And across the shattered remains of the silent blade, the Black Templars fought as if death itself was an old friend. But deep beneath the chaos, the greatest battle was not fought with bolter or blade. It was fought in the hearts of brothers. Karth stood amid the ruin, breathing fire and blood. The final warlord fallen, the fleet fragmented, and the enemy closing in like a tide. Yet his mind was elsewhere, haunted by the oath he had sworn long ago. No peace, no remorse, no forgiveness. He knew now the truth buried beneath those words. They were a prison, the brotherhood fractured. Some whispered of betrayal, others cried for redemption. Among the shattered ranks emerged a figure, Chaplain Vorten, scarred, blind, and bearing the shattered banner of the lost crusade. He raised his voice in the broken cathedral. Brothers, the oath is broken. Gasps echoed.
What madness is this? The voice shouted.
Vorten continued. We cannot endure as we are wounded, hollowed, without faith. Karth turned. His eyes, once burning with unyielding fire, now flickered with doubt. You would break the vow, he asked, voice cracking. It is broken, Karth, not by us, but by the endless war we fight. Vorten's hand lifted a relic, a shard from the Ordinatus Absolvus. The core whispers, still. It tells us that to endure, we must change. We must forgive. The room fell silent. Then, like a storm breaking the sky, the warriors erupted. Arguments, prayers, curses, faith twisted and torn. Brother fought brother in shadow. Karth's grip tightened around his blade. The man who had endured centuries of war now faced his final battle, not with enemies but with himself. Memories flooded him. Mordred's last vision, the falling of Aegir 9, the whispers of a god behind the curtain. Could he betray the vow? Could he embrace mercy? Or was this the true curse of the crusade? The battle outside raged fiercer. The enemy pressed on. Yet inside, a new war began. Karth stepped forward. His voice was a whisper, yet it cut through the tumult. I was chosen to carry the wound. He looked each brother in the eye. But wounds heal, or they kill. He lowered his sword. We are not relics frozen in time. He raised his voice. The galaxy burns. We must be the fire and the cleansing rain. The words struck the hearts of the warriors. Some wept, others nodded. The oath was shattered, but something greater was born. Chaplain Vortain took the shattered banner. Let it be known. He raised the symbol high. No longer shall we endure alone. Forgiveness is our new crusade. Outside, the enemy faltered, confused by the unyielding spirit of a chapter reborn. The battle turned. The lost crusade rose, not as ghosts of past mistakes, but as heralds of a new dawn. Karth, wounded and weary, watched the stars blaze with new light. The curse of immortality was no longer a chain. It was a choice, and in that choice the soul of the lost crusade found its salvation. The galaxy bled stars. Old suns died in silence, their light swallowed by the void. On the edge of known space, where darkness swallowed worlds whole, the final echoes of the lost crusade faded like a dying prayer. Karth stood upon the shattered bridge of the silent blade, the last bastion of an empire that never truly was. His armor, once black as night, was now fractured by time and war. The weight of centuries pressed on him, heavier than ceramite or adamantium. He looked out into the abyss. The stars whispered ancient secrets, their light dimmed, their song fading. The cost of eternity was clear. To live forever was to watch all you loved crumble. To fight forever was to never find peace. Behind him, the last of the warriors gathered, brothers broken, weary, but unyielding. Chaplain Vortain stood by his side, holding the shattered banner of the lost crusade. Neither spoke. Words were needless. Karth drew his final blade. It gleamed faintly, worn, yet pure. He knelt. The blade pierced the deck.
A single spark ignited within the metal. A beacon. A last flame.
He whispered the ancient vow one final time. No peace, no remorse, no forgiveness. But now, those words felt different. Not a chain, not a prison, but a promise. The silent blade began to dissolve. Not with fire, but with light. The ship, the warriors, the war, they faded into the warp, a memory given back to the void. Karth's form shimmered, a soul unbound. As the vessel disappeared, the stars outside shifted. A new dawn broke across the horizon. The galaxy, ever cruel, yet eternal, breathed anew. In the quiet that followed, a single voice echoed across the void. Not Karth's, not Mordred's, but a voice older than time itself. Endure, but also remember, the lost crusade was no longer lost. It was transformed, a legend born of sacrifice, a testament to the eternal struggle. And so the flame flickered. Then, slowly, it burned again.